Heidi-ho neighbors, Rado Goji here, and welcome to Squeeze the World Toys. And today, we're going to be taking a look at a new figure line from Kamen Rider. A month ago, as of this recording, marked the debut of Kamen Rider Z-O, which is the 20th anniversary show for the Heisei series of Kamen Rider. And it is also the going to be the last Heisei show for Kamen Rider, considering that the Heisei era, I should say, is coming to an end this April as Emperor Akihito is abdicating the throne to his son, and they're going to call the era something else by that point. I don't know what. I don't know if they've decided on that, but for now, we're going to talk about Z-O. The basic story for Kamen Rider Z-O, without going into too much weird detail, is that a couple of time-traveling riders are going around collecting up special ride watches, which have the essence of the past Kamen Rider's powers, and use those to don different armors and whatnot in order to defeat the Another Rider monsters. I know that there's a whole lot of other stuff, like an evil demon king and stuff going on there, but I'm really not going to go too much into detail about it. We're just going to go straight into talking about the figure range itself. So, the gimmick figure range, I guess you could say, this time around is the RKF, or Rider Kicks figures, based off of, Rider Kicks, which are the signature finishing move for any particular Kamen Rider, but also the slogan for the show, or for the 20th anniversary in general, is 20 Rider Kicks. Now, RKF itself is actually split into two different lines. There's a Legend Rider line, which they're making figures based off of older riders. So far, they only have plans for, as far as I've seen, have plans for riders from Build and ExAid. But I'm not going to be collecting any of those. The main series that I'm going to be getting figures and whatnot from is going to be the Armor Rider series, where we have our base figures and then the different kinds of rider armors that go along with it. But you do need to have a base figure, and I do have a figure of Z-O himself. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that compared to the other gimmick rider figures that we've seen before, like the Level Up Riders from ExAid or the Armor Change Riders from Gaim, this is a very, very different kind of figure. A lot of the universal articulation and whatnot doesn't seem to be there, and this is actually a bit of a cheaper figure as well. I think a bit smaller, too. I don't really have another figure handy to compare. I mean, the articulation is still okay. You've got what seems to be like a ball joint, or at least a double joint in the hip or pelvis. You've got knee bending. You've got a ball joint in the ankle. You also got the standard shoulder. You got a bit of a upper arm swivel. You don't have articulated hands, though. All of the other figures that we've seen so far have had fingers that could move. This actually just has molded hands, which is kind of an odd choice. No waist articulation, but we do have articulation in the upper chest. So you could do that, and of course you do have the ball joint in the head. It does feel a little bit cheaper as well. I think what they're doing is because they're coming out with so many figures and so many accessories and whatnot, they're kind of cutting costs on the stuff themselves. But either way, it's still an okay figure. I don't have any problems with it whatsoever, so there you go. Now, as far as the design for Z-O goes, I'm kind of two minds about it. On the one hand, I do like the color scheme, how it's kind of a throwback to Decade's complete form, what with the black and silver and highlights of purple. But then there's like the two kind of motifs going on. Now, I realize these guys are time travelers, but it's a little bit too on the nose to give them a wristwatch theme, because you got the wrist strap going up the chest, and also down the helmet in the back, and then the front of the helmet is actually a watch face with even with the hour and minute hands on there. I mean, I do like the look of the strap going down, but the clock face is a little bit much for me. Also, Another thing that I have kind of mixed feelings about is the katakana for the visor. In his normal form, his visor is katakana that spells out Rider. I do kind of like how they integrated, especially with the armor forms, with the katakana spelling out the names of the Rider whose powers he's invoking. But at the same time, I do find it a tad annoying. I don't know. Again, I just have kind of mixed feelings about it. But overall, the figure, like I said, is good. Yeah. So there you go. Now, of course, there are going to be some accessories with it, but not the accessories, or at least all the accessories that you'd expect. First off, he has an alternate pointy hand. This is mainly just to do his signature pose, I guess. And you can deploy this by taking his hand out and then replacing it with this hand, like it's an SH Figure Arch or something like that. And he can point his pointy finger up to do his pose like this. I think that's how you do. I don't know. That's what the box showed me. I don't think I remember him doing this too much in the show. And I'm pretty much up to date with the show at this point, so I don't know. I don't really use this that much because when you have the armors on, it really doesn't show up very well, so I usually just don't bother. And then the other accessory he has is his sword, which I believe is called the Jikon G-Raid, or something like that. It's basically a sword that turns into a gun, like some riders do have, and even keeping up with the katakana theme, you can kind of make out, I mean, it's all molded in black, so I don't know how this is going to show up, but there's basically katakana for ken, or sword, on there. And if he does turn it into its gun mode, the katakana changes to ju, or gun. And something I wish that they kind of did was on the bottom of his boots, it spells out kick in katakana, but that doesn't have that on the figure, which kind of is a little disappointing. Now, the thing with the blade here is that this is just, a molded piece of plastic, as you might expect. That's the way it was with the other figures that we've seen so far. But there is no gun form accessory. It's just the sword, which is kind of an odd choice, because even with, like, the Level Up Rider series, like, you either had the Gashikon weapons, you either had, like, one for each form of it, like with ExAid had, like, the hammer and the sword separately, or it was like with Brave or Paradox, where they had their weapons and they could like twist the blade or whatever to show off the other mode, or like with Laser, the Gashikon Swallow could separate. No, this is just the sword, and it's a single piece of plastic, and very cheap plastic, if I might add. I mean, it holds up very well enough and looks the part, but it kind of feels, That's probably my main complaint about this, is the accessory that comes with. And you kind of put him in his hand, and it holds onto it, and again, it looks the part, but it does look a little bit weird as well. And he can't really hold it straight without it falling out of his hand, which sucks, but again, I think that they're cutting costs with this line, because they just have so much stuff they want to get out. And I'll get to the amount of stuff coming out later, but anyway, that's pretty much that's the figure. I mean, the figure itself is all right, but the accessories are kind of lackluster in my opinion. And I'm not going to judge the figure itself just on the accessories alone, but I mean, they could do a little better. That's pretty much all I'm getting at here. Now, with this, we do have the gimmick as well, which are the different rider armors that you can get, sold separately, of course. And I do have the two that are currently out that I had planned on getting. And the first of these is the build armor. Now, something I do want to point out with this armor, with these armor pieces, you can technically like fit them together to make like a standing suit of armor that you can display. Like, here's the leg parts attached to the armor like that, and the helmet fits on pretty well as well. The problem is with the arms, and I was going to bring this out all fully assembled like this to in its display form to show it off, and then when I had, with the amount of trouble that I had getting the arms to stay on, because basically, let me bring out one of the arms here. it's got kind of like this dual slot thing going on. Let me see if I can focus in on this a little bit better. You can see there's like this dual slot thing. And there's these dual tabs that it's supposed to slide into. But it can't hold for crap. So I figured, screw it, I'm not even going to bother. Because even though the leg joints can go in pretty well, they come away like nothing as well. I mean, which is fine. I was going to disassemble it to, you know, armor them up anyway, but still, it's a pain in the butt if you want to show off all the different stuff. Now, something I do want to point out as well is that there is a secondary rider, pretty much from the straight from the get-go, Kamen Rider Gates. I do not have a figure of Kamen Rider Gates, nor will I be purchasing a figure of Kamen Rider Gates, because I don't particularly care to have one. But the way that this armor works out is that you have basically like a ZO mode, and you have a Gates mode. And the Gates mode is a little bit more black. So when you equip this armor, you can equip it like this way, to have the regular ZO mode. Or if you have a Gates figure, or even, I mean, it's universal, you can put the Gates mode on the ZO figure if you want to as well. It just won't look quite right because the coloring is going to be off, because Gates' main body is red, but I digress. You can have the black mode as well. This is the build armor, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. This is the Kamen Rider build armor. So you have the red and blue motif going on, like the rabbit tank form, and you have the like the full bottles and the shoulders. If you're equipping this on Gates, you can actually, because these are just black on the back, you can actually disconnect these and put them on the other sides on the back just to have them on, you know, in color for the Gates mode as well. I'm not going to be doing that, but you know, the leg armor actually has like a double toe there going on. But you have like the front for ZO and the back for Gates. Same thing with the armor. And you also have two separate masks. So this is the ZO one, and here is the Gates one. And rather than having katakana on his helmet and everything, Gates has hiragana instead. So it still says build here, but it's in hiragana and not katakana. I just thought that was kind of a nice little thing. So in order to equip the armor, actually, this will disconnect, and then these panels will come up. I hope that's easy enough to see. With, you know, it's mostly black plastic, so there you go. This will just actually, before opening box. All right, so we actually have to take off these ride watch holders off of his forearms, and we also have to disconnect the belt, much like we did with the level up riders. And now this doesn't want to come off for some reason. There you go. Now we can put the body armor on here. Just make sure we can get it over the antenna and stuff like that. Get it on there good and proper. And that will just hook back into place. And just kind of get this lined up properly. Get the shoulder bits in place. We also have an additional Jiku driver that has the two rider watches set. That's just going to fit into the spot where the other driver went. There's a hole that will allow access to the port. Then just kind of equip the other armor parts. The legs will hook in through holes on the sides of the legs and pegs on the insides of the armor. And the double toe thing, the double boot thing kind of going on will allow for extra stability when standing, which is very, very nice, I must say. There are these little slots, or tabs on the inside of the armor that will go into the slots where the ride watches were. You can also lift up the shoulder armor to get those out of the way. And lastly, the mask will just slide onto the face like this. And when the build armor is fully assembled on the rider, he also has another weapon that he can hold based off of the drill sword that build has. And you just put it in his hand, straighten out the hand, put it in his hand, and this will just slide over the gauntlet like that. And this is Kamen Rider ZO in the build armor. And overall, it looks pretty spiffy. It feels a lot, I mean, obviously with the armor on that, it is a lot chunkier and feels a bit more sturdy as a toy. The armor parts actually stay on the figure very well, so I do have that to be thankful for at the very least. And it feels a bit more, you know, worth it when you do have the armor on there. The articulation is not hindered whatsoever by the armor being on there. They do have the hinges in there to account for that. And, you know, that's pretty much all there is to that. So what I'm going to do is just jump cut to just the figure by itself. And I still got the belt and the ride watch holders off, but I do have another set of armor for him based off of good old ExAid. We know ExAid quite well by this point. We've gone through an entire series of figures based off of ExAid. So we have the ExAid Armor. As you can see, it has the chest plate, much like ExAid does with the buttons and the icons and stuff, and his shoulders. I noticed the shoulders, for the most part, do depict like their power sources. So we have the full bottles on the build one, and we have rider gashets on the ExAid one. There's the Gates side, in case you were curious. The legs just have pink parts on them, because ExAid is pink. And the arm parts have these sort of Gashikon breaker looking attachments to them. And the masks, here's the ZO ExAid mask and the Gates ExAid mask. So let's go ahead and basically the armor going on in this particular case is pretty much the same. It's just that the gashet shoulders do kind of get in the way a bit more, which is kind of annoying, but yeah, they're definitely getting in the way here. And it's a bit of a pain because you do have to have these panels up in order to, you know, get around his body, but you also have to have the gashets up in order to get over the shoulders. So it's kind of an experience just getting this onto him in the first place. And the cool thing about this is, if you do have a Gates figure, you don't have to swap the shoulders around because they're pink on both sides. So you don't have to worry about, you know, not being colored on one side. It also comes with its own Jiku driver because, well, you may not have the build one, so they got to come with their own. Putting the legs on as normal. Now, putting the arms on is a little bit more complicated because of the Gashikon breakers there. What you basically got to do is there's still the tab there that goes into the arm, but there's also a handle that he holds onto with his hand. So you got to get the hand in there first, and then bring it up, and also make sure that the shoulder armor is up enough so that you can fit the arm, the upper arm part in there. Overall, this is a bit more of a pain to, you know, in general, to equip onto him because you got to line everything up, and the stars have to be just right. I haven't had a lot of practice with this either. I've had the figure itself in the build armor for like a few days now, but I just got the ExAid Armor today. Okay, that took longer than it frickin' needed to. I don't know if there's like some sort of magic way of knowing like how these line up, because it took me darn near, I don't know, frickin' 10 minutes to put these two things on. Because you can't see the tab when you're putting it over. This is the, you know, complaint here. And ultimately, when I was finally able to get this on, the hinge had come off for the upper part, and I just, you know, went ahead and put the forearm on, and then reattached the hinge, because these hinges, and this also applies to the build armor as well. The hinges on the armor do have a tendency to come off, you know, to come apart as well. They can be easily put back together, no problem, but it's still a pain in the tuchus. And obviously, we just go ahead and slide this on, and there is ZO in his ExAid Armor. And again, he looks pretty neat. The only real like separate weapons he has are the Gashikon breakers for his arms, which look like they wield a little bit better on the show than they do on the figure, in all honesty. But it still looks kind of nice. I definitely like the build armor more than the ExAid Armor, just on the principle of getting the darn thing on. Like I said, these Gashett shoulders get in the way so darn often when you're trying to manipulate anything else. It's really just kind of a pain to put the armor on. It looks nice when it's on, and it's definitely worth it, but compared to the build armor, this is just quite a bit more of a hassle, and I don't like it as much, you know, just on that comparison alone. But overall, this series of figures does look promising, and I will be getting more armors as they come out, but not every single thing. As I said before, I don't have any plans to get the Kamen Rider Gates figure. There's also a Ghost armor for Kamen Rider Ghost out that I'm not going to get, just because Ghost never interested me, and so I don't really have any interest in getting the Ghost armor. Pretty much everything else that I've seen coming out, at least as far as this quarter is concerned, I will be getting, though. There's a ExAid Armor that I think just came out in Japan and will be available to pick up soon from certain online retailers. I'll probably be holding off until I get paid again before I get mine, but there you go. Also, there's a Kamen Rider O's armor coming out that looks really neat, and a Kamen Rider ExAid Armor, which we're fairly sure is going to be like his power-up for the first part of the show. What kind of disappoints me, though, is that there have been quite a few other armors that have been seen in the show so far, or at least a couple other ones, that they don't seem to have any plans to release in this line. Like, Gates has access to a Drive armor for Kamen Rider Drive, and I've been interested in picking that up as well, but there don't seem to be any plans to release that at all. Also, in this upcoming episode, if the previews are to be believed, Gates is going to be gaining access to a Fies armor as well. And I really like Fies, but the Fies armor doesn't seem to be a toy thing. So that's very disappointing. I honestly believe that they're probably going to leave out a lot of the pre-Decade riders, or at least like bunch them up in their own like premium Bandai set. Which would really make me a little cheesed off, because there are quite a few riders that I would be interested in getting armor for, like Kuga and Kuga, Fies, Kabuto, and especially Blade, with Blade being my favorite rider. But I'm fairly sure they're just going to probably like bundle those together because they're Bandai and they want to put as much on premium Bandai as they possibly can. And who knows if we're even ever going to see the other ones that I'm interested in getting, at the very least, are Drive, which I already mentioned, has been seen on the show, but doesn't have any kind of release for that yet. Also, Double and Gaim are ones that I'm interested in getting. But I'm not going to get any of the other stuff. Like, I'm not going to get the bike. I'm not going to get, like, there's going to be, like, a super Gaim watermelon arms thing. I'm not going to get that either. I'm just going to get this. I just have this figure here, and I'm going to get different armors for him. And at the very least, it'll be hunky-dory on that part. The ExAid Armor looks awesome. The O's armor looks really interesting as well, and I can't wait to see what they do with the Decade one. But as for the ones that are out now, the Build Armor is really cool. The ExAid Armor is also really cool, but it is just a pain in the butt to put on. Either way, look forward to more reviews for Kamen Rider Zeo stuff, and until then, I've been Rado Goji, and I'll be here next time. Join me, won't you?